Right. Cool. Looks like we're live.
Yeah. Okay, so we're live. Welcome to another edition on the YouTube channel here, talking about anything related to Bitcoin. Um, don't forget, it's not financial advice, but you can always buy the dip. I don't know if you saw the screen with a man. Uh,
Yeah, no, it's good. I actually, it's funny because I think Adam Back tweeted that out like when I first started getting into this, and I was like, come on, there's no way you could do that. And then I spent way too much time with a Google spreadsheet and figured out that you can actually. I mean, I think historically, if you buy, it was something simple. It was something along the lines of if the price drops 20% and you buy and you wait for it to recover 10%, on average, you end up doing like 450% better day for day than if you just buy and hold. I still wouldn't recommend it, but
no, yeah,
it's
that's
possible.
it's really you gotta be. Trading is it takes a special personality. You need to look at the market 24 hours, and I think Bitcoin itself holds so much potential that being a hodler, it will earn the people that have the opportunity to invest in Bitcoin enough reward.
Yep. Yep.
But
Totally. But you can.
anyways,
So buy the dip if you haven't bought yet.
yeah. Right now it's a good opportunity to buy the dip. And last year we had 6 times Bitcoin drop more than 30%, or in the range of 30%, recovering strongly. This recent drop was 70% and was the fourth drop, I guess, above 50% in the time of Bitcoin, and it has to happen after periods of FOMO, or fear of missing out, where the price has gone really, really high. I guess, uh, yeah.
Yep.
Then the drop is even higher, and it's an even better opportunity to purchase some Bitcoin on the cheap.
Yep. Yep. Every time it has, a huge all-time high, you know that the risk is less if you can buy it a lot less than that. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously the investment thesis has to be stronger than just price history, but um, I think if you take any time, it's pretty hard to argue that it's not a good investment. But yeah,
yeah. I know from watching you on YouTube, both on Block Digest, which I really recommend as a high quality YouTube channel, and also you on World Crypto Network a few times, which I also really highly recommend. Um, by the way, Vortex, the one Vortex who has the new show on Sunday, who's still doing really well. He's coming here at my meetup in Los Angeles, Century City. I believe
nice,
I have the link below. He will be talking about who controls Bitcoin as a presentation at that meetup, the 1st of June,
awesome.
10 a.m. So that's going to be good. Anyways, so a lot of respect for you. And then on top of your opinions of Bitcoin and your extremely well argumented reasons for why altcoins don't really hold any value, which I totally agree with. I have yet to see a single altcoin with a potential to be above zero on the long run, or in the long run. Then you have recently, or at least it's become public recently, started working with something that I am extremely passionate about. And when I saw 2 days ago that you said that you were looking to expose this message a little bit further, I reached out to you and said I'd love to have you on my little show here, where it's really about the education. It's about um, better um, better ways of teaching kids, and maybe you can give a little background on yourself, and a little background on your project, which is called mathbot.com, where uh, kids and adults alike can learn math for Bitcoin.
Yeah, totally. So my background is mostly in software security. I've been an academic, and I've also been an entrepreneur. And so about 2 years ago, I started working on MathBot, And I got it to a point where I could put it in the hands of, you know, a few dozen kids. And I ran into a problem. So the idea behind MathBot is, I wanted to build a game that was so fun that kids would play it, and do problem solving, and in the process learn programming and math. Because programming and math are both fun, and the way that they're taught is so not fun that it causes everybody to run from it. Um, and it's just problem solving. So it's pretty hard to make problem solving not fun to humans. We're hardwired to enjoy problem solving, but unfortunately, the invisible hand of corruption has pulled that off, and problem solving is no longer enjoyable for pretty much every kid, at least in the United States and in most countries around the world. So the inspiration was to do that, and I got it to the point where I could put it in the hands of kids, and I realized it wasn't good enough. And it wasn't good enough because basically, if there was a parent there that was encouraging the kid to play the game, then they would play it. And what I wanted was something that was so fun and so functional that kids would play it, even if there wasn't, hey, I'll give you an ice cream. So at that point, I stepped back and realized, what I'm trying to do is basically impossible, right? I'm trying to compete with like Angry Birds, which is already, if you pull off a game that is popular, it's already like winning the lottery. And then I'm also giving myself additional constraints of trying to make it very educational, right? And there will be moments of pain and frustration built into the game because that's how learning works. And so I shelved it, and a couple months later, kind of got really obsessed with Bitcoin. This was about 6 months ago. I'm definitely late to the game on that front. And just about 3 months ago, I took it back off the shelf and got really serious about it, because I realized that with Bitcoin, I actually could make it work. I could reward the kids financially by giving them Bitcoin, and that would be enough to cover the gap between how fun it is and how fun it needs to be, or how rewarding or pleasurable or whatever, how much the kids get out of it, in order to have them be self-motivated, right? Which was the goal. So now the idea is, it's not as good as Angry Birds. It's like hopefully 80% as good as Angry Birds. And so it would just be on the pile of trash that kids, you know, and adults wouldn't play with. But because you actually get a lot out of it, maybe there's another adult or a grandparent or a parent that will pay for you to play the game, and then you'll get rewarded financially. So for example, you know, if you have kids, you might pay $50 for algebra, and as your kid passes different levels in algebra, they get $3 per level. So by the time it's all over and they've learned algebra, they've been given $45 worth of Bitcoin. And so we would take, you know, 10% or so to fund future development and advertising and that sort of thing. But hopefully the you know, in the kid's mind, I wouldn't play it otherwise, but it's not that, it's kind of fun. And if I'm going to get $45 out of learning algebra, yeah, I'll knock it out in a few weeks. And
totally. If I can just ask you a question, and first of all, say that I definitely think that carrot will work, and you getting a reward motivates a lot. I remember personally when I was a kid, my grandfather said that every time I knew a new basically, you know, I don't remember what it's called in English, but you know, if you say 4, 8, 12, 16, you know, when you know a new sort of
a multiplication, you know, like your multiplication table. So you learn a new
multiplication, exactly, a multiplication table. Each time I knew a new one of those, he would give me 20 crowns. So my sister would teach me, and I would like memorize, and then I would go and do the test in front of my grandfather, and he would give me 20 Danish crowns, and that was excitement for me, and I was happy to earn that money. And it you know, to this day, I remember those probably partly because of that. So I definitely think it motivates a lot. So the one question I have for you is, you say that so grandparent anyone pays, for instance, $50, the kid can make back 45. So if you say that is $50 worth of Bitcoin, I mean, is it then calculated in US dollars? Is it denominated in dollars, or is it denominated in Bitcoin? So, for instance, somebody pays 50
Yeah.
microbits, and then you earn back 45 microbits. Or do you see what I
Yeah,
mean?
no, I would want it to be. I mean, so to be clear, we're pretty early right now. We have the first 10 levels that covers kind of basic programming. We, if fingers crossed, we're going to release 3 more levels today that gets us kind of complete with basic programming. But the vision is of the 13 levels that we have, we'll probably have about 200 when it's over, because we want to go from the very beginning all the way through calculus. So we still have a lot of work to do, and all of the reward system is not built yet. We're actually, it's an open source project, so if anybody's interested in helping with that, definitely hit me up on Twitter at weathermanIam, because we could definitely use some more help. But yeah, so it's early. We don't have everything built yet, but the way that I see it working, it would be denominated in Bitcoin, partly because the value of Bitcoin fluctuates, right? And so I wouldn't want to be in a situation where the game is essentially bankrupt because we took $50 worth of Bitcoin, and now we have to hand out $45 of Bitcoin, and that's actually such a gap because of the fluctuation in price. That we wouldn't have enough Bitcoin to cover it. So for example, let's say Bitcoin's at $20,000 and you buy $50 worth of Bitcoin and send it to us. And now we need to give the kids or the students $45 as they complete the levels, but the value of Bitcoin goes from 20,000 to 9,000, then we would actually not have enough Bitcoin to hand that out. So we'll just keep it denominated in Bitcoin to keep it simple.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And, I mean, I'm a big fan of Bitcoin. I think that partly the reason that I got drawn to Bitcoin and stopped working on MathBot was that I had that hard incentive problem that I couldn't figure out how to overcome. But it was also partly, at the end of the day, like, your grandfather knew how to teach you math, right? This stuff is not rocket science. We know how to incentivize people, and kids are just, little people in most ways. And so the real problem is public schooling and this meat grinder that we just feed kids through that really destroys their love of learning in multiple subjects, but math and programming or logic, I would say, is really the one that I think is most damaging. So I'm really excited about Bitcoin because I think that really defunds the root problem as well, and arguably is going to have a much bigger impact on not just kids learning math, but everything from medical technology advancement to just a reasonable justice system, right? So I think Bitcoin is definitely more important than MathBot. But if MathBot can help solve the problem and can be a good way for kids to learn, and then also, if people get more exposed to Bitcoin and realize that it has real use cases, right? This is not just for buying crack online. This is a technology that solves lots of fundamental problems, and this is an example of something that I just simply couldn't do without Bitcoin. And
Right.
so, yeah, I'm more than happy to, if it has some contribution to Bitcoin adoption too, that may be even more important.
I think there's a good chance of that. I think the concept that you're working on here definitely has the level of excitement or basically fundamental change of the way we're doing things now, that it should be able to get exposure in mass media. And especially, with the headline, as you're saying, Bitcoin is not only for buying drugs online, it's actually also for learning math, etc. But I'm happy to hear that you're saying that you're denominating it in Bitcoin. I mean, both of us have a love for Bitcoin, and as you're saying, if you denominated it in anything else, it would be an issue to use Bitcoin as a payment, because it could go either way. And to be honest, I think that kids would be much more excited to be able to earn Bitcoin, and if they take a long time, if they take a couple of months or half a year or something to get through these courses or the parts of calculus, for instance, then that reward actually, all of a sudden it may not be worth $3, it might be worth $30 or whatever. So the incentive could increase, or I guess both you and I would believe that it will increase, because we believe that Bitcoin will be worth more in the future.
Yeah, yeah, and eventually it'll also stabilize in price.
I agree.
It's such a new technology that people that are frustrated that it's volatile, they're just not thinking about the fact that new technologies, when they're adopted rapidly by a percentage of the population, it's going to be volatile, right? Like the price reflects how much people understand about the value of something, and there's so much that the average person has to learn about Bitcoin, everything from basically once they've heard the name on that that there's going to be a lot of fluctuation in how much they value it, and whether some con man comes along and convinces them that it won't work for some economic fallacy or some technical fallacy that's going to affect how much they want it. You multiply that by a billion people, and you're going to have a lot of price fluctuations. But yeah, I'm confident in the long run that it will be a good global money. And in the short term, it is unfortunate that it's going to fluctuate in price, at least for my use case. But I don't have an alternative, right? I cannot do this with credit cards. I
I
can't
don't
do
see
it
that as a negative, because even though it fluctuates, let's be honest, it mostly fluctuates upwards, which
True.
only increases the kids' incentives, like on average, anyway. And
Yeah.
another thing is that Andreas Antonopoulos, I remember seeing a YouTube video from him where he said, yes, Bitcoin is volatile, but every single year that has passed by since Bitcoin's inception, the volatility has gone down. So
Right.
every single year it's going down. It's getting more and more stable. So that excuse or for Bitcoin being, or as a negative flaw of Bitcoin, is that argument is just getting less and less valid.
Yeah. Yeah. The way that I look at it is, I think, and I don't know if it was a forum post or what, but I've consumed, I think, everything Satoshi wrote over the last few months. And the best analogy, and the one that I go back to a lot, is he said, just imagine we discovered this new form of metal, and it's ugly. It's not, it's not good for jewelry making, and it's not strong. It's not useful for anything, but it has these weird attributes where nobody can take it out of your hand unless you approve it, right? Unless you say like a magic word. And if you do, you can transmit it from your hand to the hand of anybody else in the globe instantly. And it's also, infinitely divisible. And it absolutely can't be counterfeit, right? Like you can't spray paint a piece of tungsten steel, or put a a coating of gold on a tungsten brick and have people think that it's a solid brick of gold. It's
Yeah.
easily verifiable, can't be counterfeit, can't be stolen. And he said, it wouldn't be good for anything except for money, but it turns out that's really, really valuable. And the thing that I would say is, just imagine that really did happen, right? To take it out of the digital realm, where we can kind of imagine the value of that metal would be super volatile, right? Like some big company in Indonesia would realize, oh my gosh, this thing works as money and it solves all these problems, and they would buy a bunch, and the price would skyrocket. And then somebody would come along and say something that was confusing, or they'd make the argument that the government's just going to come along and steal it, and then some other group is going to go, oh, I got to get out of it, and they're going to dump it. But over time, as the market cap grows, those reactions matter less. So we're still really early in that.
There will even be people calling this a new commodity of fraud, because it's new. So,
right. Yeah.
And I just before I think we should continue here, I just want to say that me personally, and why I find this so interesting, is I've been thinking for the last decade or so that if I had enough money to actually help the world and do whatever I like, sort of on a voluntary basis, I would love to be able to help education, and make education accessible for the entire globe, and not only people who live in countries where there is a school system, or and I think internet is, of course, making it possible to share information. But I really think you're hitting the head on the nail on this one, where you're using the internet. It's a game. It's becoming fun. There's a reward built in, and this should be and it should go global. And there's no reason that learning this way should only be for math. I really hope that you can spread this to everything, different topics, and as you mentioned earlier, medicine. You know, if this can help people around the world increase their level of knowledge, then the increased knowledge will then help solve problems like digging a well in Africa so you can get water up, and all these things. So
Yeah. I have a neighbor, and she's got a baby in the hospital right now that just had to have a lung removed. And what frustrates me about, I don't know, if there's one thing that kind of frustrates me about the world in general and Bitcoin and economics, it's that people don't understand that that if you solve a problem and you solve it for 10,000 people, those 10,000 people have resources that are freed up to solve another problem. And it's sort of the butterfly effect or whatever, right? Where it's one small change and it replicates out. And so if you build a piece of software and it solves some problem, right, and it's solved for millions of people, it is going to result in a lot of different things. And one of those things it's going to result in is an advancement in medical technology, right? So for example, there are surgeons right now that can sew together babies' arteries that are like 1 or 2 millimeters. So what that means is that there's babies that would, and this is why I'm pretty sure that the freaking Roger Ver clowns started taking my talking points and turning them into a to a joke. But it does come down to dead babies, right? Like if there's one thing that as humans that we're hardwired to really, really despise, it's innocent little babies dying, right? And so right now there's surgeons that they can sew up stuff that's like 1 or 2 millimeters. It's incredible. Like there's a lot of little guys that are getting taken care of, and they're not suffering as a result of that.
yeah.
And it's not because that some surgeon is just brilliant. It's because medical technology has advanced to the point where we have robots where you put your hands in this robot, and when you move it a quarter of an inch, the robot only moves an 18th of a millimeter, right? It's just, it takes all of your movements and scales them down. And then you have a screen that you look at that's kind of like a video game, right? That makes your movements and your hand movements and your eyes coordinate, right? A lot of that stuff is possible because some guy in the 80s wrote a piece of code and he had no idea it was going to be an important piece of the puzzle to solving, you know, really big problems. And between government intervention in the economy just sucking out productivity from all of us and putting it into not just the war machine but just massive inefficiencies, and people not quite realizing that we have just a lot more suffering and death in the world than we need, like a whole lot, right? So if Bitcoin gets adopted and those sort of inefficiencies get defunded and taken out of the system, or if I'm able to with other people make something like a game that helps kids learn and enjoy math, the amount of impact that that's going to have is going to be huge. Because what it comes down to is building tools that solve problems, and most of the tools that I think most of us would agree need to be built are in the world of like code, right? They're writing code to solve problems, especially as we get more robotics online, and more broadly math, right? It's pretty hard to think about major fundamental problems that's facing humanity right now that don't basically come down to somebody that has a love for math working on them. So I big picture, you know, I really do care about this, and I think it can make a really big impact. And gosh, yeah, it definitely gets my goat to hear the crap coin guys trying to slow the adoption of secure money, and then on top of that mocking the idea that it results in dead babies, because it really freaking does. And it's really gross that they know that, and they're still willing to use that as talking points to do the opposite.
Right. Agree. I kind of, I mean, yeah, I really don't like the altcoins and those guys and what they're trying to do, and they're totally delaying the adoption of secure money. But I guess there will always be scammers, and I'm trying just to focus on, let's go forward with Bitcoin, as it will take over the world, as in my mind, and not really any doubt about that. But okay, so I have two kids, for instance, and I'd love for them to get started with this. How far are you now? I mean, they can start playing, but you said the payment and the reward structure, that is yet to be programmed, and you're looking for some open source developers who can help you with that part. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. But we do have the first 10 levels out. Like I said, I think we'll be at 13. Fingers crossed, end of day today. So you can definitely get started. So go out to mathbot.com, create an account for each one of the kids. And I don't have the reward set up, but just do what your grandpa did. Just say, when you learn, when you pass all these first 10 levels, I'll buy you ice cream. And even though it's just the beginning, it can have a huge impact, especially when they're young, if they understand that this is programming, and it just takes all of that like fear that the society around them is just going to wash them in when it comes to math and programming, so that they're just inoculated to the idea that this stuff is painful or not fun. And then I will send you an email update as we get additional levels out, and then you can just keep cranking. So I would say within the next couple months we'll have kind of the recursive and loops done levels in programming. Shortly after that, we'll have math, or at least addition, I should say. So,
Right.
so yeah, just crank through the first ones, and then look for updates, and buy the kids ice cream when they pass.
Right. What sort of grade level is the current level at? Which grade level?
Yeah, no, good question. So I have had some 5-year-olds that have played all of the levels, and all the levels that are out right now, and they'll need a little bit of help, but it's surprising how far they can get and how little sort of hints that they need to keep going. So if if you were going to send this to a kid that was going to have absolutely no support, I would say maybe 6 or 7. But 5-year-olds that can be told, "Oh, put it inside here." For example, they'll totally be able to get through it. At least some number of the levels. Maybe they won't be able to go beyond level 7, and they'll come back to it in a couple months.
Right. Interesting. And you say, so you're using a Bitcoin. Did you touch earlier upon, or we discussed it before we got started on the stream, why you're using Bitcoin, and why are you not using the money that most people, or let's say the currency that most people have, as fiat is not really money in my opinion, but why not use credit cards, and what's the reason for using Bitcoin?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So I would probably, for US people, I would probably prefer to use US dollars than Bitcoin right now if I could, because I don't want to have any more barrier to entry than I have to, right? Like the mission is already absurdly difficult. I want to destroy public schools' involvement with math education, right? That's a big enough mission for one small open source project. But I don't have a choice, because if I wanted to use US dollars, let's say I was going to accept US dollars in PayPal or credit cards or any of the payment methods that are available, I would have a big problem, which is chargeback. So if you go out to zappos.com and you buy a pair of shoes right now, you don't know it, but you're spending about 10% more for that pair of shoes than you would otherwise, because with the credit card fees of maybe around 3%, that's a big chunk. But the other 7% comes from the fact that there's a lot of people that will go out with stolen credit cards. They'll buy stuff from Zappos or other retailers, and they'll get their stuff within a couple days, but then the owners of the credit cards, or there's this concept of friendly fraud where it's actually your credit card, and you just claim that it was stolen, or you claim that you didn't authorize the purchase. That phone call can be made up to 6 months later. So you could buy $700 worth of shoes, have them shipped to your house. 2 months later, you could call up your credit card company and say, "I didn't authorize these purchases. I don't know what this is about." And the credit card company and the whole payments processing system is immediately going to reverse it out of Zappos bank account, right? So that they shipped out, $600 worth of shoes. They sold them for $700. They expected to make a profit, but now that money that they got actually gets immediately reversed. And so not only did they not make the $100 profit they were counting on, minus the 3% credit card fees, but they are actually $600 in the hole on that purchase. And they have to take that loss and spread it out on all of the other people that are actually paying for the stuff that they get. And so that's a huge problem that applies to just people that are shipping shoes. But what we're trying to do is even more attractive for fraudsters, because we're accepting payment and then we're giving you back payment, right?
Yeah.
So let's say theoretically, if little Billy actually had a Square account or something, which he doesn't, and I was somehow able to pay him with a credit card, even if I was able to do that, which that's in and of itself a huge problem, right? Like the 8-year-olds that I want to give ice cream money to are not, they're not merchants that have a merchant services account with Visa. But even if I was able to overcome that, this chargeback problem would be huge, because I'd have a ton of fraudsters coming, giving me $50 on a credit card, and then probably there'd be a click farm in India playing the game, earning the money back. And then 3 months later, after I've already taken $50 worth of Bitcoin and handed out 45, or cash in this case, they'd reverse it. And so I would be massively in the hole for that user. And then that's why people have a lot of frustrations with, my credit card got frozen. I went out of town and it got locked. I tried to make a purchase at a place I hadn't bought before and it got locked. It's because the system is so inherently broken that there's all these layers of really half-assed sort of fraud protections built on. But even if I had all of that, like even if I just accepted the hassles of all of the random, card lockouts, and somehow I was able to get every kid to be a merchant with Visa, I still wouldn't be able to do it, because the fraud is just rampant on these networks. So really, cryptocurrencies, and that's why I kind of shelved the project, because I couldn't think of a way to overcome it. But that's why cryptocurrencies are really important, at least in this use case.
Or let's say Bitcoin is really important.
Yeah. In theory, I could do something, with other cryptocurrencies. But I think it's worth pointing out that the reason that I wouldn't is that I'm technical enough to know that these things are frauds and that they're eventually going to zero. And I wouldn't want to encourage people to get exposed to them at all. So.
You don't want to leave a kid stuck with 7 levels left, and the reward he has waiting for him has gone to 0, so he doesn't have too much incentive.
Right. Or connect them with the fraudsters at Ripple. Completely confuse them about the value of Bitcoin.
I love that Santander, was it 3-4 weeks ago, they had the press release saying that they launched this app where you can send funds around the world, and it's using the Ripple technology. It's based on the Ripple technology, but it's not using the token. And,
right.
And like everyone's been saying, or a lot of people have been saying for a while, then what's the Ripple token for? Why does it have any inherent value? Why would it not be 0? Why do people buy it? Part of the answer is I got when I saw a friend of mine who hasn't done too much research in it, and he said, he opened an account with one of the exchanges, and then he saw Ripple was so cheap compared to Bitcoin, so he bought it because of the unit bias, and he could get more Ripple than he could get Bitcoin. Because Bitcoin was expensive. But I want to go back to the thing you spoke about credit card and the issue of chargeback and what it does to the cost of the companies or merchants in general. What do you think would happen to prices in general if Bitcoin becomes the medium of exchange, unit of account, the money of the world, or US or wherever?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's let's say that between 7 and 12% of all online purchases, or online purchases would be between 7 and 12% cheaper for everything, right? Like anything that you use a credit card for that you buy, every time you go out to Amazon and you buy something, it would be roughly 10% cheaper than it is right now, which in and of itself would be a massive, I mean, many billions of
Fantastic.
dollars. It would be huge.
Yeah.
And that's just one of like the least important parts of Bitcoin, really, and that people don't recognize or realize is valuable. More importantly, we have this boom and bust cycle, right? Like everybody remembers, you know, everybody that's our age at least can think back to at least 2008, and they remember the housing bubble, um, and they know about sort of like just the confusion and people being out of work and just the lack of productivity that came out of that. But I don't think they realize that it's a regular cycle, right? That wasn't special. It happens every 7 years or so, and it happens because central banks print a bunch of money, send confusing signals to all the entrepreneurs in the economy. They make investment decisions they wouldn't have otherwise, like building a ton of McMansions when there really isn't demand for that. And then that demand dries up, and yeah, that demand dries up, and then you have all of these resources that are unwanted, right? And again, it comes back to like, imagine if all of the energy and effort that was put into building a bunch of unwanted houses was actually put into building something that we needed, like solving a problem that humanity is facing, whether it's, you know, better technology on drilling wells, or better robotics, or, you know, whatever you can think
Yeah.
of, whatever pissed you off today, we probably could have easily solved that problem if we didn't malinvest all of those resources. So
Yeah.
that's hard to imagine. I mean, the way that I think of it is that it'll be like time travel, right? In 10 years, instead of being 10 years further, you know, the way that we think of technology progressing will be maybe 60 years further. And it will be a very weird experience for everybody that lived. It will feel like we stepped out of Soviet Russia, right? We'll go, oh my gosh, everybody can have a TV, right? We'll have that same experience once we move on to Bitcoin, and we'll look back at, you know, the prosperity of and everything that we've enjoyed in America and in the Western world and really valued as, by comparison, poverty.
Right. Yeah, I have personally myself thought a lot about how the middle class was doing exceptionally well in US in the 60s, and everyone had like a house and a car and or two cars, and it was all based on one job, and you can have all that. And that middle class has pretty much been wiped out.
Yep.
And I just have a strong feeling that the monetary system, which essentially robs value from people every single day when more money is being supplied into the system, which it is. It even has a nice name. It's called quantitative easing when it's big amount of wealth that is being stolen. That's part of that reason, and it creates a society where you're kind of better off if you take on debt and then spend it, while a society with a sound money like Bitcoin, you'll actually be in a better position if you save up money, because that savings, instead of it decreases in value every year, it will increase in value. Instead of being able to buy 3 trolleys of food this year, next year you'll be able to buy 3.5 trolleys of food, for instance.
Right. Yep. Yeah, all that's true. The thing that I think I struggle to communicate the most is that money is to our economy is basically a bunch of individuals buying and selling stuff and trying to solve each other's problems, right? That's what an economy is. And money and prices are the sort of the IP packets, right, of that internet, right? We have this network of people working to solve problems, and money and the prices that come out of having money and using money are the pieces of data that get sent out, you know, from the US to a factory owner in China, right? And they're aggregated and they're collated in ways that make it really easy to understand what decision to make in order to solve problems. And as much as I hate the fact that central banks print money and they give it to their buddies, right, which essentially makes the money that your grandma has in her bank account less valuable, as much as I hate that, the fact that when they do that, it also just distorts prices and causes confusion. If to go with the internet
The
analogy,
bubbles you spoke about.
yeah, we're trying to have a conversation on the internet right now. Imagine if there was random pieces of data that were shoved on the pipe that connects us, right? That's exactly what central banks do to the economy. They cause confusion all over the place in millions of different little spots, and that makes us all so much less wealthy than we would be otherwise. We don't know how wealthy we would be, but we know that slows things down, right? It's like a break on everybody's productivity all the time. And that's the thing that I get most excited about, is trying to imagine what the world will be like when those breaks are taken off.
Right. And I think it's interesting how few people question that in a so-called capitalist society or country like United States. Then something as important as the price of money, which is the interest rate, is actually centrally planned.
Right.
That is not very, capitalist free market. It's very much the opposite.
Yeah, it's absolutely like a Soviet style system. And like you said before, though, the good news is the stuff is coming to an end, right? Like Bitcoin works, it's government hard. Nobody's going to be able to shut it down. It's going to be a lot harder to steal from people through all the different mechanisms, and a lot harder to distort the economy and slow things down now that it exists. And my goal is just to accelerate that process by like 5.5 hours, right? Like there's going to be a day, maybe in the next 10 or 15 years, where we fully adopted a global money.
right.
And if with MathBot or something else, I could make just a tiny nudge on that process, it'll totally be worth a lifetime of work.
No, but I think you will. I have no doubt. MathBot is really an exciting concept, and if there's any way that I can help, you let me know. What I do is Google AdWords advertising, but I don't know if that is necessarily what is useful. But
No, I think anything that a business could use, MathBot could use, right? Like if we were, it is for profit, but the way we're organizing it is interesting. We're trying to do it in an anonymous way, where everybody that's involved can be anonymous if they want to. I'm trying to remain, using my pen name, and so we're not taking on a lot of the legal overhead and nonsense that I don't think is functional anyway. But at the end of the day, yeah, I mean, in order to get more kids using it, we need to advertise. Like nobody's going to hear about MathBot or use it unless we put some work into that. So yeah, I think anybody that has a skill set in the for-profit world is probably can do something to help us out. So yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Yeah, actually, I was going to ask you about that as well, because I think it's such an interesting project and potential company that you're working on here. That what is the status in terms of how many people is involved in the ownership of MathBot right now, and are you looking to get investors to help you expand the company faster, or the website and the everything?
So we've got there's basically 5 of us that are involved in it right now. That we're not all working on it full time, but probably 3 of us are full time, and then the other 2 guys are, I would say, 20-hour week sort of guys. So there's basically 4 full time people working on it full time. But what we're trying to do is a little bit weird. So for the year or so that we worked on it back before, what we did is we just have a Google spreadsheet, and we just kept track of, we're all friends, right? So we're just keeping track of who's putting in how many hours and how much each of their hours were worth, right? The graybeard that can architect Scala is more valuable than the junior guy that's doing front end code. And so we just have like an hourly rate, and then how many hours they're putting in, and we've just tracked that over time to represent ownership, right? So that when we do finally start getting money in, we can contribute. We can pay people that have contributed, pay them back for their work. They'll probably never get what it's worth, especially those guys that started working on it early, like me. But we're all doing it out of we'd all do it for free, but we would like it to be sustainable, right? The reason that we're not doing it as just a normal open source project with no profit is we do want to be able to fund advertising, right? We do want to be able to get people to work on it that can't afford to work on it for free. And so most of us really don't care, but we want to create a system that works, and we'll attract people that do care. So we've had this Google spreadsheet, and now we're thinking that maybe we'll do. I know this is anathema to like everybody that hears me talk about the crap coins, but we may do sort of a token concept. We haven't worked out all the details yet. Yeah. But I mean, it wouldn't be an ICO. It's not going to attempt to be money. It would absolutely be a way to replace what we already have, which is a Google spreadsheet, right? And so we're not going to claim that it's secure or that you should invest $1 million into it, because at the end of the day, it's an open source project. It's not likely to be super profitable, and more importantly, you still kind of have to some degree, trust the people that are involved in the open source project. I'm excited about doing that because I think that it is a way that a lot of open source projects could be funded. The backstory there is that I interviewed Chris Beams, the guy that runs one of the main guys involved in the BISC network, which is the decentralized Bitcoin exchange. And at first,
I heard a lot of good about.
Yeah, so he basically converted me to this concept because I think I had him on like right after I had Fluffy Pony on, if I remember it, and I was completely prepared for the conversation to go in a similar way, where the first half an hour, we're friends, and the second half an hour we're calling each other conmen. And I knew Chris was doing something with a token, and that's enough to like set off all the red flags and go, all right, 99.9% chance this guy's a scammer. But as he explained it, I was like, this really does make sense. It really does make sense to try to find a way to replace what has traditionally been done through stocks and equity for an open source project. And so I'm happy to screw around with it, but I also want to make it clear that there's no way to invest in my Google spreadsheet right now, right? But I do want to make it clear, and this is something that I think a lot of the projects don't make clear, is that it has no potential to become money. Bitcoin does have the potential to become money. And so Bitcoin is an incredible investment opportunity. And this is not anything near that scale.
Right. But I think that I've come to the same conclusion myself, that there is the coins that are trying to become money, like Bitcoin, Monero, Zcash, Ripple, or Ripple are saying that they're trying to be money, Litecoin, etc. Where I only see Bitcoin being the one who has a chance, as it is at the moment, really to be the winner in that winner takes all game that money is. Because whatever is best on those properties you have of money will become money, will be the thing that people end up using. And then there's other securities that are trying to tie themselves into the success of a company. Some are doing them as utility tokens, which is like, like I haven't seen one project where I say, okay, this utility token makes sense, but it would make sense for tokens to represent equity in companies.
Right.
So if you have like 100 shares in Mathbot, and each token is one share, and then people can subdivide it, and if they want to sell 3% of the share, they can do that. I mean, that's the good thing about the tokens, that they're divisible.
Yep. Yeah. So what I imagine that probably 95% of the people that are listening to me talk about this are like, oh, all right, we lost another one. He was being honest about how economics works, and now he's a fraudster. But just if you guys can help me think of a better way to accomplish what I want to do, then let me know. And that, I think that's how you can tell a fraudster versus somebody that's legitimately trying to solve problems. If you explain to Fluffy Pony that Monero doesn't have the potential to become money, and so everybody that invested it is heading to zero, he's not going to go, oh, you're right, and you're not going to be able to actually have a dialogue with the Ripple guys about that. But if you can tell me how I can reward people, and for me, I don't care, because this has always been a charitable project for me. But if you can tell me how I can reward people like you that are going to put in maybe hours into doing, helping us get our Google AdWords working and functional, whether you can afford to do it for free or not, right? Then I would do that. But the basic hack, and it is a hack, right? Like if I could do it, if we had like kind of a functional society and I could just fire up a company and it could be, I don't have to, put my name on it, or there was a way to do it that was safe, and we had a legal system where I'm not going to get sued because I haven't hired the right ratio of whatever, whatever politically protected groups, right? If I could do this, then I would. But this hack is basically, we'll create this token. When somebody purchases the game, we'll take, they spend $50 for algebra. We'll take that $5. We'll buy $5 worth of the token, and then we'll destroy it. And when people make contributions once a month, we will issue tokens to them based on their contribution. So if you did, 5 hours of AdWords work and that was worth $500, then we'd give you $500 of those tokens. And then as people play the game, they would effectively end up destroying some of those tokens to take them off the market and increase their value. It's not ideal. It's goofy, right? I totally get that it's a goofy arrangement, but it's the simplest hack I can come up with.
Sorry. I'll let you finish.
Oh, I was just going to say it's goofy. It's not ideal. It's just the simplest hack I could come up with so far, and I think it's better than the. Literally, to put it in context, I've literally have a Google spreadsheet that I've been using with the 4 other guys to keep track of stuff. So if this is better, then I'll do it. And if we can come up with something even better than that, then I would do that too. Right.
Well, I think that if you're planning to do it as an equity thing in the company, that practically that makes sense. If you're trying to do it as you need to buy this token, so you have that as money to play the game, it becomes one of those, it's a utility token where we're trying to force you to use our money to play this thing, and because we want to be money as well, and that does not make sense. I understand that.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. So I think that I think that if it was an open source project and we forced the kids to buy like MathBot tokens in order to play the game, then that would just be a far worse user experience. And so I would hope that somebody would come along. And again, this is open source, right? So there is no value in any of this that anybody can't come along and just grab and copy and run off with, right? There's no network. There's no real brand name, right? It's all of the value is in the code. And so if I started doing something shady with this Google Docs spreadsheet and started giving myself equity in this thing that I didn't deserve, the fix is just for the other 3 guys to go, oh, screw JW, and just create their own spreadsheet and leave me out of it, right? And just copy the code. So there are some sort of safety valves when it's a purely open source project that don't apply to a lot of these scammy things. But yeah, it would create a worse user experience if I was to do that. So like Kik is trying to do that, where they're going to make kids buy kin tokens in order to transfer them around inside their application. That's really stupid, because as soon as they open source it, somebody's going to fork Kik and they're going to allow you to use Bitcoin natively. It's going to be like, the first pull request is just enable Bitcoin. And then it's going to be a much more enjoyable experience. So
because why do you want to have this extra money where when you want to use the product, then you convert from Bitcoin to that currency to immediately use it, and as soon as you're done using it, you go back to Bitcoin. Why do you have this fake layer? If people are not going to hold it because they believe it stores value, it's not going to be worth a lot.
Yep.
Anyway, so let me just ask you. I presume that the reason you don't want to open, or one of the reasons you don't want to open a normal legal company or legal entity is because then you cannot stay
Pseudonymous. Yeah.
Anonymous. Yeah. Right.
Yep. That's part of it. I mean, I could have, and I thought about it before so I had worked on MathBot. I kind of shelved it for a few months, got obsessed with Bitcoin, and then created a pen name to do Bitcoin work under, because having done security research, if you call a scammer, they'll sue you, right? So it's very normal in my career to work under a pen name for some work. So I kind of just did that out of habit, right? But then when I got excited about MathBot again, I thought, should I release this under my real name? Because I have a network, I can raise money, I can do all the traditional stuff that I've done in the past. Or do I want to release it, as part of Bitcoin and under my pen name? And the real equation for me came down to, there's just so much bull crap that you have to do when you create a company. It's not just like accounting and payroll and all of that, but you got to have like an HR department. And that always disgusted me, right? Like I absolutely despise what HR even represents, right? And I'm not talking about hiring. I'm talking about all of the inane rules that you have to comply with in whatever jurisdiction you're in to make sure that everybody feels warm and fuzzy. Or, frankly, you end up hiring people that you wouldn't hire otherwise, right? That's the whole point, is that there's guys with guns that say you will hire somebody that has, this profile, whether they're the best engineer for the job or not. And it doesn't actually, like, all the stuff that I've done has been, relatively small teams.
It's right. It's funny you mention it, because in the 3 countries that I lived in and worked in, there is at least one group that there are some laws that X amount of the people working in the company has to be from that group. So you're absolutely right. It does exist.
Yeah, and it's not the end of the world, but it makes everything a lot less fun. And that's one of a million little things that are really annoying as a business owner in the United States. You're not actually a business owner. You're a conscript, right? Like the stuff that came out where New York was asking Kraken for all of this data, and they just got enraged that, like, you're giving me a ton of work that I have to do, right? I have to fill out hours of forms. It's got to be senior people in the company, and I've got 2 weeks notice to do it. And the sort of a rage that they expressed in the community is like, yeah, this is absolutely inappropriate. That happens 10,000 times a year to any small business owner. There is just an infinite number of those sort of things that you have to deal with. And they're very just demotivating, if nothing else, right? You interview somebody you're excited about, and then you interview somebody else that's like 92% as good, and you hire the person that's 92% as good. Did it change the outcome of your business? No. Lots of people make successful businesses, but is it fun? Absolutely not, right? It's very discouraging and demotivating. And when it's something like this, where it really has to be sort of a hobby and a passion, and I'm not expecting to make any money off of it. I don't think there's going to be a tax man involved at some point, because my motivation is just to get it up and running and have it make an impact. I just decided I'd rather not have to deal with all those headaches and hassles. So that's really what it came down to.
I honestly think that you have, I mean, I don't know if I expect that you're being 100% truthful, but I personally see a much bigger potential in this than you're describing. So I don't know if you're just being modest.
Well, I mean, there's potential, but but I also don't want to, I mean, I don't want to be dishonest with sort of my assessment of it, right? Like I
Right.
could say, oh, the education market is X billion of dollars and we're going to get X percentage. It's an open source project. I expect
Yeah.
that it's going to get forked. Other people are going to go, they got it 80% right, and they're going to get it 85% right. And that's not
Right.
going to be me anymore. So, yeah, I mean, maybe we'll kill it, and we'll, the math bot will be cranking out, thousands or tens of thousands of dollars per hour worth of courses that we're selling. But
But
it's not necessarily my expectation, although
right.
it would be a
Right.
nice, unexpected sort of
Okay.
outcome.
But were you expecting to develop the whole concept into other, like learning other things than math, right?
I would love it if we nailed. I mean, math and programming is just massive. Like it's of all the things that a kid needs to learn, what is it, maybe 30%? Like it's
Right.
huge. And I'm pretty good at teaching those topics. I've never been good at, just personally, I've never been good at teaching English. I'm a terrible speller. I didn't learn how to write well until, post college, basically. And it's still debatable. I'm certainly, nobody would hire me as an editor, that's for sure. So yeah, I mean, my own personal desire is to focus on that, and I think that's more than big enough of a problem. But what I would really like is if we proved the model and some stuff. Like I would love, for
Right.
example, to prove the model of how, you want to call them utility tokens, can be used to replace equity, and actually, I'm really copying Bisq, but if I can help advance that or help prove that model a little bit, that would be cool.
You
And I
mean
would
equity
love to.
tokens? You mean equity tokens replace utility tokens, right?
Yeah, yeah, sure. I don't know if,
Oh,
yeah, yeah. I would love to be able to be one of the first teams that show a way to compensate people for contributing to open source projects. That
right.
that would be really cool. I don't know what
Yeah.
it'll look like, but the other thing, the other like sort of big picture beyond just math and programming I'd like to impact is right now, if you walk up to the average public school teacher and you say, hey, why don't you guys just take some of your budget, and when people pass levels, you just give them like $2, right, or $5. They'll probably know about studies that have been done in the United States where we've proved that if you do that in inner cities, scores go up, right? And you
Mm,
don't have to be an economist to go, okay, before you may not have learned multiplication, but when your grandpa said, I'll give you 20 kroners, you
yeah.
did learn multiplication, right? Because you had more incentive to do that.
Yeah.
And of course we've seen that play out in the studies that they've done. So the average public school teacher will tell you, oh yeah, that has been done and it does work, but it has these really negative side effects. And the really negative side effects is it just crushes their love of learning, because it's really important that you only learn for the love of learning itself. If I pay you to do it, it will actually demotivate you. And they've been programmed with this idea pretty effectively through teachers unions and the normal invisible hand of corruption. So I would love for MathBot to prove that that is absolutely ridiculous, and that no, it is completely okay. You don't have to just have the stick. You don't have to just like have public shaming and
Yeah.
intimidation and just
Yeah. I mean,
avoiding pain be the only reason to learn math. It turns out you can actually, it's okay if you learn programming because you want to get paid well. It doesn't, it's not special for kids. It's okay for kids to have additional positive incentives too.
right. Yeah. I agree. And as I mentioned, I have two kids, and they usually, when they come home after school, say, "Oh, I don't want to do homework. I don't like homework." And if something like MathBot can make it fun, it would be great. And when you think about how much money it costs to operate a school, if you could take like one thousandth of that money and use it for basically student reward motivation program, it may, if that increases the learning by the kids, by just 3%, then it's an actually a return 30 times more than the running the
Yeah,
like what you're
absolutely.
paying otherwise.
Yep.
It's an extra incremental huge increase in learning, like a huge return on investment.
Totally. The textbooks that they have are like 100, $150. If you just said, all right, we're going to have half as many textbooks, students are going to have to share textbooks. And if you pass, you get $50, right? If you pass at the end of this, if you get above a C or whatever, we already know that that's going to have an impact on test scores and outcomes and their ability to learn. And if you do the math on that, right, you saved $150 per two students, and you've given out $50 per two students, or $100 per two students, it would work just fine, right? There wouldn't. Yeah. What could possibly be the downside of doing that? And like I said, they've done studies. The reality is there, but there's nothing that there's nothing that a corrupt system hates more than solved problems, and that's why they won't pursue it.
I want to just highlight one thing that I want to hear your opinion on. One problem that I have with all ICOs, and potentially also you would have in this situation, I just want to hear if you thought about it and what could possibly be done to resolve it, is that all these ICOs that sell tokens for, say, $100 million, nowhere is that that company who sold the token legally bounded to that they have to keep using that token and only that token, and they have a responsibility to the people who invested. So it's a problem if somebody buys something like let's say, for instance, that the equity of MathBot is 100 tokens, and somebody buys 10 tokens. How would they know for sure that like they cannot sort of be sure that
it would be really
that you risky. Say is coming, they will get it.
Right. Yep, totally. Yeah, I think so for MathBot, there I don't know. I guess ultimately what I'm counting on with MathBot is that you can fork it and go do something else. There's really nothing I guess I can do to prevent people from. So let's say that we have this, let's actually forget about the token and we just have this spreadsheet, right? And let's say Bob's been a contributor and he owns 22% of future revenue in MathBot as it stands, right? If people buy it and there's some money, then he'll get something back for all the work that he did over the last couple of years. There's really nothing that can be done that prevents him from selling that, selling 1% for $10,000 to some sucker, right? Like I could say, well, I won't approve it, I won't put it in the spreadsheet, right? But that doesn't mean that he couldn't have some side deal that doesn't even have to get reflected in the spreadsheet.
Yeah. Right? But that should be okay, right? I mean, why shouldn't that be okay?
Well, I mean, the downside of that is that it would be fraud, I think, especially if he lied to the person, right? So if he said, hey, MathBot is going to take over the education market, it represents all this revenue, and you're going to be a billionaire if you buy this thing. Somebody could commit fraud with MathBot tokens, right? Or MathBot entries in my Google spreadsheet. I think the main problem, though, is not that it's possible that would happen. It's that you have people like Vitalik that are very, very good at it, and they're doing that intentionally. Or like Fluffy Pony, like, don't buy it, but here's all the reasons that it's going to become global money, right? Like, don't buy Monero, but it is the most private, fungible, secure asset.
But I don't recommend you buy it. Yeah, I love your way of.
Yeah. So I think that I think it's possible that theoretically possible, somebody could commit fraud with these entries in the spreadsheet or whatever, or ownership of future revenue. But I think if we're honest about how it works and what is actually going on, and we, like, the people at the top don't put all the right pieces in place to create a really effective system of corruption and theft and fraud, I don't think it'll happen, because there's just going to be better hunting ground elsewhere. It's just a lot easier to screw people over if Vitalik is the front man than if it's me and I'm like, yeah, it's probably going to be forked and somebody else is going to do it better. And it's a spreadsheet.
Okay. All right, fair enough. So do you have any like what's the plans? Like how far are you in the plans of putting the removing like taking the ownership you have in the spreadsheet onto a potential uh token, and would it be for public sales as well, or like if somebody comes and say I have $5,000
So
uh
I'm not gonna. I mean, eventually, I think in order, if we go down this road, it would be listed on an exchange, and then our software would automatically buy it off the exchange and destroy it, and then we would issue it. So eventually, I think it would be possible for people to buy it. I don't know if we're going to do it 100%. I mean, I still have that's the direction that I'm heading right now. But this idea is about a week and a half old, maybe a week old, to go down this road. And I still don't. There's still things that feel very greasy about it, just on an emotional level.
yeah, no,
So
we're
I'm
both very anti ICO and altcoins.
Yeah, so I'm still kind of hoping that somebody's going to help me figure out a better way to do it, that doesn't have the same problems. But I mean, at the end of the day, a share in anything can be used to facilitate a scam. So um,
Yeah, I think I just think that as much as I'm totally against like all the ICOs that I've seen and on all coins, then um, equity on a token makes a lot of sense. It raises some legal questions, of course, um, but it could make a lot of sense
yeah.
with equity
So
on a token, and I wouldn't be against that in a principle, because and then I've been thinking about, I know the guy from Overstock, he's creating he wants to create the foundation for um, like stock exchange on the blockchain or something like that, right?
right.
And I don't know. I've been thinking back and forth, and to me, if Bitcoin anyway is money, wouldn't it make sense that, let's say you have this token and it's or this the company, and 100 tokens represent 100% of the equity in that company, then that instead of it having its own blockchain, which by the way is not very secure, wouldn't it make sense, and you're the technical guy, I'm not technical, wouldn't it make sense to have that as that 100 tokens as a side chain to
Yeah,
Bitcoin? Is that possible?
yeah, it totally makes sense to do it as what would be called like a colored coin on top of Bitcoin. There's no reason to create another blockchain for sure. Those guys are also doing something called Raven Coin, and that is an absolute joke.
The
And
Overstock guy,
yeah, yeah.
right?
He's associated with Ravencoin. I'm not exactly sure what is going on there. I think Bruce Fenton has been shilling Ravencoin on Twitter pretty aggressively. Um, and I went back and forth with him for a couple hours trying to help him understand that it was a fraudulent joke. I think he does understand that, but he's going to get paid for people being suckered by it. So yeah, I definitely think I probably wouldn't move out of the spreadsheet. Like, let me put it this way: I wouldn't move out of one spreadsheet to another spreadsheet. Right? It works
Yeah,
fine in a Google Docs spreadsheet. Everybody knows that they have to trust me to update it. But if I don't update it right, they just fork and say to hell with JW, and then go build their own thing. I wouldn't take it off of that and put it on Ethereum, because Ethereum is just a glorified spreadsheet as well, where we just trust Vitalik to decide
oh,
what it's going to be, and he can roll it back if he wants to. He's proven that several times. So I feel like that would be security theater, right? And I don't do security theater. If you got to trust me
I
to
know.
update the spreadsheet, you're going to know it. And if you don't trust me to update the spreadsheet, then don't work on the project, because I might not update the spreadsheet, right? But if we could put it on colored coins on Bitcoin, that's probably the only way that I would do it. But the other huge issue there is still, just because the tokens are there, the issuance of additional tokens, you still got to trust me, essentially, not to create a bunch more, and
Couldn't it
give
be?
them to
Couldn't it be?
myself.
Couldn't it be in the source code of the token that I mean, if you say that you want to have the capability to burn them and create new ones, that in the source code it says it can never be more than X amount of tokens, for instance. So you can only issue new when you've burned down some of them, for instance.
Yeah, it wouldn't matter though, because I could still just issue new ones and give them to myself when I should have given them to the people that actually worked. So whoever has
Right.
control of issuing the new tokens needs to be trusted. So
Right.
taking things that are in the physical world and putting them on digital tokens on top of Bitcoin, it does solve some problems, but it's like a very narrow set, and it's certainly not secure. At the end of the day, you're still trusting somebody. So I think one of the
Mm.
things that we'll do that makes us less scammy is we'll just make that clear, right? We'll try to make it really clear that no, this is not secure. Like, you still have to trust me not to issue new tokens. If you don't trust me not to issue new tokens, then don't work for those tokens.
So
And
what?
if I do screw you over, this is your recourse, right? It's just to take the project and go. And hopefully, that would happen, right? Like, there would be enough social pressure to where if I tried to rip everybody off, the other contributors would just ditch me and go. But it's still, it's not like Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin's freaking amazing. Nobody can steal your stuff. That's awesome.
Mhm.
With securities that represent future revenue, people can still steal your stuff. So I think
Yeah.
that clear is important.
Okay. One idea came to my mind. Shoot it down. What if it is that new tokens cannot be issued? So you have the 100 tokens, and what happens instead? The revenue from MathBot
Yeah.
would be a Bitcoin dividend going to the owners of those tokens, and then you would have to in order to be able to pay some contributor to the project, you would need to, with the Bitcoin, let's say the company has 50% ownership of like the tokens, it would get some of the Bitcoin dividends. With that Bitcoin dividend, it would need to buy up some of the tokens. So you could give some guy sitting in China and programming like 1% of 1% of the token. Do you see what I mean? So it's a fixed set of tokens. You get part of the dividend. I mean, the company gets part of the dividend, uses part of that dividend to buy up some token to give that. So you're helping keeping up the price of the token.
Yeah. So I think let's just say that there was 100 contributors and everybody had one token, and then somebody played the game and the game wouldn't work unless it was able to buy one token and destroy it. Then and let's say that a few of us have our tokens listed for sale on Bisq or some exchange, and so the game ends up buying a token for whoever's willing to sell it cheapest, right? So let's say the game buys it for $1, and then it destroys that token. Well, there's 99 tokens left in existence, and the last sale was $1 for one token. So that would mean that each token would be like worth $1.01, right? It would create that market value because the price is just historical anyway. Um, and if all of the people that own tokens knew that their token could at any time be sold for whatever the lowest price is, right? The game's going to go out and they're going to buy, X number of tokens or X number of dollars worth of tokens or whatever. That part is a hack, but it totally works, right? With money, if I just take some off the market and destroy it, then I've proportionally rewarded everybody that has them, right? So that I'm not concerned about that, even though it's hard to kind of describe and explain. That part works. The part that's goofy is when you make a contribution, you do $100 worth of advertising work. How do I reward you for that?
Mm-hmm.
That's the part that gets a little goofy, because what you want to do is you want to create new tokens just like you would with new stock, right? You'd issue new stock and you'd give it to the employee that made the contribution. I don't know how that could be done trustlessly. I think what
Right.
Bisq plans to do is they're going to have everybody that has a token is going to be able to vote to approve compensation requests or new issuance. And if that can all be done um, through a smart contract, it has to be on a platform that's immutable, though, right? So doing this on Ethereum doesn't matter, because Vitalik can just say, "Hey, I don't like the way you guys structure that," like he did with the DAO, and reset it.
Ethereum is mutable. They proved it with the DAO. Yeah.
Right, right. So if Bisq could build the smart contract on top of Bitcoin that allows everybody that has those tokens to vote on new issuance, I think that would be awesome. And that would certainly go a long way to removing the amount of trust you'd have to have in any one individual person. We don't have that technology yet.
Right.
The simplicity language that's being built, I'm sure would be able to do that. And so I think that's coming. It's still not as good as Bitcoin, right? You're still, because somebody could still get 51% of the outstanding tokens and just vote to issue themselves more into infinity like a central bank. So it's still important to recognize that these are a lot of problems that that maybe we can get a little bit better with than we are today, where, because all these problems exist in the real world too. Like, I've been able to create companies and had enough voting shares to where I could screw over anybody else, and also known that I had enough money to where if they sued me, they would never be able to afford to continue the lawsuit to the point where they got justice. Right. I've been in position to be able to screw over business partners before had I chosen to do it. And that exists in the real world. So a lot of these problems are coming over, and they're not necessarily getting solved just because we throw a token at it. These are mostly hacks so that we can say, well, we don't even have a functioning legal system anyway, so let's not pretend that we do. And let's just make some decisions based on people's reputation and see how far we can get.
Right.
So that's kind of how I see it.
But don't shareholder agreements usually protect minority shareholders? So I mean, I'm not too familiar with it, but
Yeah, a lot of times they do, but a lot of times it's really easy to get around that. And more importantly, what are you going to do about it? You're going to sue me? I have plenty of money. You don't have any money, so good luck with that.
that's true. Yeah, I guess that here money is what buys justice. Justice, like what is right, is not what
Yeah,
wins court cases.
yep, yep.
Money rules government. Money rules the legal system. Money
Yep.
rules pretty much everything.
Yeah. So my basic position is, because we don't have a functional legal system, I don't really want to go through all the security theater of creating a company and pretending that if I'm the majority shareholder, you actually have much in the way of legal recourse. Because the times that that I have engaged in legal conflict, or I've had partners or friends engage in legal conflict, it's always just a game of chicken, right? It's like there's no justice that's going to happen here. It's whoever's pissed off enough to burn enough of their own funds to be able to burn the other person. And
Yeah,
if if somebody stole $100 from you, if you're able to get back 25 after you spend another 75, that's pretty decent. That's not atypical. So instead of pretending that all of those protections exist and then taking on all of the additional hassles of all these goofy compliance rules and things that just aren't fun, just acknowledge that that this is kind of goofy and it's a
yeah,
hack, and we'll just wing it and
right.
see how it goes. But it's not going to be money. It's not going to be money, and it's never going
No,
to be. It's never going to make you rich.
no,
And
it's not
if you're
money,
thinking
it's equity.
straight, yeah, you should invest in Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is going to become global money, and it's really freaking cheap right now. And even if MathBot tokens ended up representing every dollar of education spending in the globe, it still wouldn't be as good of investment as Bitcoin. So, yeah.
Yeah, the way that I look at Bitcoin is because it has better properties, and as I totally agree with you. The other day you said, when you spoke with Andy Hoffman, that it is a winner takes all game, and all history has always shown us that there has been one money, and it's essentially whatever is better on those properties. Um, was mobility, portability, durability, and fungibility.
And
It
difficulty
tends
to
to more
steal.
value. Sorry.
Right. And difficulty to steal. Yep.
Yeah, that's actually new things that that Bitcoin has introduced that we never had before on any money. But the fact that it's unconfiscatable, and also it's censorship resistant 100%, which WikiLeaks proved, then it just is so much better on all aspects. Well, being side note that fungibility is not there yet, which is privacy, which we'll probably have within 2 to 3 years. But once you have something like Bitcoin that is so much better on all properties. Like there's nothing that's more portable in the world than Bitcoin. You may find something that is equally portable, but that's nothing that is more portable and more secured. Bitcoin is more secured, has more network effect.
Right.
There's nothing that's more durable than Bitcoin. There's nothing that is more divisible than Bitcoin. I mean, you can't beat Bitcoin essentially.
Right.
So my conclusion is that Bitcoin will take over as money in the world. And then I look at, okay, what's the end store value, of course, because it has the scarcity and it has the utility of being able to be used as money. Lightning will help that. Lightning Network a lot, of course. Then the value of gold in the world is around 8 trillion US dollars. So each Bitcoin, if it should match the global value of gold, would be worth around $500,000.
Yep.
And then if you look at the value of the money supply in the world, and it is a global thing we're looking at because Bitcoin is global, it's not regional, it's not national, then the M1, M2, M3 money supply in the world means both actual notes and coins, deposits in the banks, and all of these things sits around 90 trillion US dollars. So combined with gold, that's around 100 trillion US dollars is the value that Bitcoin essentially is competing against, as
Yep.
it is a better store value. It is a better money. So that is the aim it has, you could say. And if you take into account that 4 million Bitcoins apparently have been lost, we're looking at a value around 6 million US dollar per Bitcoin.
Yep.
Of course, no, not an investment advice, but I just thought I'd bring it up. You're mentioning that Bitcoin is an interesting um, risk reward or calculated risk investment.
Yep. Yep. Totally. So unlike most of the scammers out there, I'm not going to say don't buy this thing because, or I'm not going to tell you all the reasons that this thing is going to be wonderful and magical and super valuable, and then tell you not to buy it. I'm going to say this is like super experimental. It's goofy. It's a hack. There's tons of security issues involved with it. If you don't trust me, you definitely shouldn't do it because I could just overwrite the Google spreadsheet or whatever we end up with. And by the way, you really should invest in Bitcoin for
Yeah,
all of these really sound reasons that you just outlined.
right.
It's a winner take all market that is a minimum of 100 trillion, and it works better than everything else, including fungibility. I mean, there are some problems with chain analysis and being able to see where something goes, but if you buy Bitcoin on a decentralized exchange and you don't share your social security number, and you use a mixer, right? If you're super paranoid, you're totally fine. And it's still a whole hell of a lot more fungible than any government dollars that are in your wallet that have serial numbers on them and can easily be scanned if they choose to do it when you
Right.
deposit it in the bank. So
Right.
yeah,
So
that's my argument against trying to say that any of these security tokens are a great investment, because you have to put it in context of we're about to reset global money, and you're going to feel like a real idiot if you don't play in that.
right. Right. Okay, but so the answer to your question is that right now, equity in MathBot is based on contribution. You are not interested in anyone coming and saying, we'll give you 5,000 US dollars or half a Bitcoin or whatever to help this project against getting a stake in it because we believe in it, or like what's your situation there?
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't give me any money, partly because I'm working completely for equity, right? So if
Yeah.
you said, hey, I want to give you money, as an open source project, we really can't have like a bank account. I think that
Mm,
would be a bad idea. So if you were trying to do that, I think you'd have to reach out to one of the developers, maybe somebody that's working part-time, and say, hey, why don't I give you $10,000 to work full time on it over the next couple months, and you give me the equity that you would otherwise get. Right. I'm not suggesting anybody do this, because I don't think
no.
that any of the contributors would, say yes, because but that's the sort of way that I would see it happening before we get on an exchange. I don't think it would. You can't reach out to me and buy any of my entries on the database.
Because you're
My,
yeah, you want to keep it.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
But
No,
yeah,
I'm just
but eventually, and I don't even have a time frame for when we would do this, because it's a really new idea.
yeah.
The history here is somebody said, hey, I want to work on it. And I realized we were already tracking it in a spreadsheet. And I was like, all right, well, I'll have to clean up the spreadsheet because we're lazy and we rarely keep it up to date because we don't really care about it that much. But this guy, he deserves to be treated, as somebody that it's not part of the small group of friends, right? We got to treat him right and keep track of what his future reward should be. And then I talked to a couple people and they said, yeah, you should do it on Counterparty. I was like, oh gosh, that sounds ridiculous. And then gave it more thought and realized it's better than a spreadsheet, I think. So I
Mhm.
don't know. I've heard there's problems with Counterparty. I don't have any kind of a time frame for when we're going to do
Right,
it,
right,
but it's just kind of the general direction we think we're headed with
right, right,
a week and a half of thought. So
right. Yeah. But you can think a lot in just even 10 minutes. So a week and a half is okay. I was just trying to find out if that is something that you guys are looking for, fun, so you can help buy more developer time in order to move the project forward, or if you are solely looking for developer contributions and then paying them in equity. And it seems that the latter is what works fine for you.
yeah, I think the only way to practically have people um, invest with the scheme that we're thinking of is they would buy the tokens once they were on an exchange, and then that
Mhm.
would increase the market value, which would allow the existing like past contributors to get rewarded a little bit more, and then also that would allow when we issue new tokens for the existing people to be diluted a little bit less. So it's a hack. It's kind of a roundabout way that they could do that. But yeah, it wouldn't be possible for probably at least 6 months, I'm guessing.
Right, but it's it's very interesting. I mean, the whole putting companies somehow on tokens in a way that is not scammy is interesting, and I think equity like this is the answer. Um, is there anything more you would like to say about MathBot? I mean, we moved a lot into a discussion of Bitcoin and ICOs and tokens and equity tokens. Is there more you want to say about the website and the project and the future, or anything we
Yeah,
haven't covered?
yeah, let me just give a quick summary. So we are looking for contributors. Again, if we end up doing anything stupid with the token that you don't like, just fork it. So it's not like we could run off with your contribution and do anything shady. We're built using Scala in the back end and Vue.js in the front end. Although any JavaScript experience is useful, and we could definitely use help getting the word out, and then also with UX design. So uh, UX design, graphics, that sort of stuff. Those are all sort of real time needs. But really, if there's anything that you could do to help a software project in general, we could probably use the help. And the goal really is to make it such a good experience that public schools and even private schools for that matter just don't even attempt to teach math anymore, because this is just such an easy way to do it and such a pleasant experience. So we'll see how far we can get on that, but if that sounds interesting, let me know, and we'll figure out how you can help.
Right.
Yeah, so
Actually,
thanks for letting me talk about it.
no, man, it's been my pleasure. I followed you since you um, arrived on YouTube. I first noticed you on Block Digest, as you said, half a year ago, and then I checked you out on Twitter, and I saw you had only a few hundred followers, and I was like, how come this guy makes so much sense and he's not followed by 40,000 people? But obviously it makes sense when you're new in the game.
Yeah, I mean, if I showed the crap coin, there'd be a huge budget that would kick in that would start
Yeah,
promoting everything that I said. So if I want to say something nice about Litecoin, I'm sure the Litecoin Foundation would retweet me or something. But
right.
um,
Yeah,
but uh, but no, it's been a good time. It's
yeah,
been a crazy 6 months. I've been learning as much as everybody else, and yeah, I'm having
yeah.
having fun.
Yeah, so I can just recommend to anyone viewing this YouTube video to go check out Weatherman, or JW Weatherman. His Twitter profile is in the comments below on the description of the video, so that you can click over to his Twitter profile and follow him. I highly recommend. I also recommend to watch Block Digest on YouTube, that channel, and World Crypto Network that I also mentioned earlier. And then I just want to say the thing you mentioned about your ambition is that that schools don't even bother teaching maths anymore because this should be better. It reminds me of another thing from my childhood. Even though my childhood may be far away, I have a fairly decent memory, I would say. And I remember, so in Denmark, you can't start school until you're around 7 years old. Actually, it's fairly late. And I remember a year before that, I was just really bored in kindergarten. I really wanted to go to school, and I told my parents, "Please, can't you put me in school? I want to start learning. I'm just, um, wasting my time here. Not wasting my time, but just playing, and I want to learn. I want to get ahead." And I convinced them to go to the school. We went to the school, and the school, of course, rejected the idea. So there was no real learning opportunity there for me. But that was obviously many years before the internet. But now that we have the internet, it'll be possible for kids to start whenever they want to learn. And you mentioned some 5-year-old kid had been playing MathBot and went through the program. And once again, I just want to say that I really hope that this will be successful and go global. I hope you get coverage on it in the media, as much as we may not always like mass media. It could be useful to get the word out. I think it's a great course. It's something that I had a passion for many years without doing anything in it. But if we could help make education accessible to everyone cheaply and great around the world, then it could be so beneficial to the entire human population. So I wish you the best of luck, and yeah, thanks very much for coming on and explaining.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks for having me. Yeah, and if anybody's listening, go out to mathbot.com and just play with it. It works in Chrome right now. I don't think it's working in Firefox, but hopefully that'll be fixed today too.
Right. Well, I'll definitely have my kids sign up, and I'm pretty sure that. Well, okay, so the reward system isn't there yet, but going forward, I'm pretty sure that they would love to be able to earn some Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
so would have to purchase some Bitcoin to pay the
Awesome.
yeah. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Thank you so much. And if we stop the broadcast here, if you're going to hang on a little while, we can just chat afterwards.
Yep. Sounds good. Thanks again.
All right. Cool. Thank you, everyone. Bye.